Good morning, everybody, and welcome to week 3 of our Into the Unknown series here at Oakridge Student Ministries. I'm Jeff Hopkins, and I am the youth and young adult minister here at OPC, and it is awesome to have you guys join us this week. We're looking at a series that talks about and learns about change and how we react to change. And we've been learning the past couple of weeks that change can sometimes feel really scary. And it can sometimes be something that feels overwhelming and makes us either want to run away from it or, for a small portion of us, run towards it. And this week we're going to get into the idea of fear, the fear that causes us to run away from change. Most of us are afraid of something. Maybe it's one of the really common ones, like a fear of snakes, or bugs, or spiders, or heights. Maybe you have one of the more uncommon or really random fears, like a fear of feet, or of balloons, or ducks. So I'm super curious. For those of you who are in the room with us today, we're going to hit pause, and I want to answer the question, what are you scared of? So let's take a minute and find out. We all have things we're afraid of. For me, it's a fear of heights. When I'm standing at the top of something really high, I get that feeling in the pit of my stomach and like a tingling in the bottom of my feet, and I both want to jump and want to run away at the same time. It scares me and it excites me. That might speak to the adrenaline seeker in me, but why are we spending time talking about stuff we're afraid of? Well, because we've been talking about how to deal with the many different kinds of changes in the unknowns in our lives. We have unknowns both in our school, in our family, in our home life, in our friends, and way beyond. And I don't know about you, but sometimes dealing with the unknown feels a lot like dealing with spiders or heights or roller coasters or the dark or somebody just jumping out at you. Any of you really sensitive to the jump scare? In other words, it can be scary. When we look ahead and see changes like that coming our way, when we don't know what's waiting for us in the unknown, well, that can leave us feeling a whole lot of fear. Maybe we're afraid that things will never go back to the way they were before. Or we're afraid that the changes we're facing will bring a lot of stress our way, or frustration, or sadness into our lives. Maybe we're afraid of the unknown, just the unknown. We don't know what things are going to be like when we experience the changes we're facing, and that makes us feel afraid. Or maybe we're afraid that we'll have to face those changes alone. No matter what the changes and the unknowns you're facing in your life right now, chances are you feel a little bit nervous or afraid about what they might mean for you. Even the best kinds of changes can be intimidating or bring a fear into our lives. It's possible to be excited for something and a little scared at the same time. I can remember the first day of school, in a new school or a new grade or whatever it was. There was always a little bit of nerves in there. There was always a little bit of fear. Excitement to see what was coming next, but fear of the unknown. But what if I told you there was a way to look ahead to the changes coming our way without so much fear? In fact, what if we could face going into the unknown with courage? I bet all of us would like to be people who choose courage when we go through change, whether it's good or bad. Well, today, we're going to look at something that happened to two guys thousands of years ago that helped them choose courage despite their fears. And I think it's going to help us do the same. Before we jump into that, let's just take a break and discuss. Okay, so the people we're talking about are known as the Israelites. They were God's chosen people, which is a pretty cool title if you ask me. And when they were living a long time ago, God did some really cool things for them. He led them down to Egypt to escape a terrible famine, which basically meant that all the food in the land had run out. That sounds like a good change, right? Well, sometime after they got there, the Egyptians enslaved the Israelites. When that happened, they cried out to God for help. And God sent a man named Moses to lead the Israelites out of slavery. Moses was going to lead God's people into an incredible new land of their very own. a land called the Promised Land, out of slavery and right to the Promised Land. Again, all of that sounds like a good change to me. There's nothing to fear there, right? Well, when they arrived at the edge of the Promised Land, the Israelites got nervous. They got scared about what might lie ahead. So they sent 12 spies into the land to check things out, to look things over and make sure it was okay. And the spies went in and found that the land was absolutely beautiful. It was everything that they had ever dreamed it would be. But there was one small problem. There were people there who looked like giants. Suddenly, this change wasn't looking so awesome. When the spies came back to report what they saw, they said this, that we find in Numbers chapter 13, verses 27 and 28. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here's the fruit. The people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. The spies went on to tell all of Israel that there was no way they could live there. They were too afraid. Now, in a lot of ways, you can't really blame them. Giants are scary and overwhelming, and going to war against giants, even scarier. Their fears were pretty understandable, and I think the same can be true for us. The fears we feel when looking ahead at the changes we might deal with are really understandable. They're real, and there's nothing wrong with us for feeling those fears. The problem comes when we let that fear hold us back. When we stay frozen because we're afraid of what's ahead in the unknown. That's when we risk missing out on something that could turn out to be pretty awesome. That's what happened to the Israelites. They were too afraid to conquer the land that God had promised to them. Well, all of the Israelites, except two of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, came back with a completely different view of things. And here's what they said in Numbers chapter 14. And they said to the entire Israelite assembly, "The land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, He will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them." Everyone said that they couldn't enter the promised land except for these two spies. So what is it about them that made their response so different? How was it that Joshua and Caleb were able to see the same giants that everyone else saw, but had courage to go forward and go ahead anyways? The answer is really simple. They trusted what God said is true. They believed God's promise. And that belief gave them courage to move forward towards a big change, even though they were scared. And honestly, they probably were terrified. But here's the thing about courage. Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about trusting and choosing to follow God, even though we're scared. That is what allows us to be confident when everything changes. Like Joshua and Caleb knew that God was bigger than their fears, we can also trust God when we're scared of change and of the unknown. So what does that look like for us today? How can we have courage when we're looking ahead to changes in our lives, whether they're big changes or small changes that leave us feeling a little bit afraid? How can we remember that God is bigger than anything in the unknown? Well, first, I think we have to recognize what we're afraid of. When you look out at the unknowns in your life, what do you see that's causing you to fear? Maybe your dad is getting remarried, and that's left you afraid because it means your family will look different now. Or maybe it's a fight with your best friends that you're afraid won't get worked out. Maybe it's starting a new school that has you afraid to be alone. Whatever it is, figure it out and name it. Acknowledge what you're afraid of. Then try to do what Joshua and Caleb did. Focus on God. When you think about what changes you're afraid of, remember that God is with you always and is working for your good. God is bigger than anything in the unknown. Let me share with you an idea that might help you when you're afraid. Whatever you focus on will grow bigger and bigger in your mind. If you focus just on what you're afraid of, how worried you are, and over all the what ifs that might happen, your fear will continue to grow bigger and bigger in your mind. So instead, focus on God. Focus on who God is, how powerful God is, how God is in control of everything. Focus on the fact that God is with you and in you and is with you every step of the way. Focus on the truth that God is bigger than anything you face. Focus on the truth that God is working for you in every way possible. And as you focus on God, you'll find that your fear is smaller than God is, which is the way it always was. Let's hit pause there and discuss together before we wrap up. Remember, God is bigger than anything in the unknown. And that means we don't have to face our fears and changes alone. Not only do we have God, but we have people like our group that we're meeting with together and our leaders who are here with us when we face whatever it is that is in the unknown. We are all here together to help us, to help each other be honest about what we are afraid of, and to help each one of us have courage when we need to face those fears. Today, I hope that you will open up to our group together about how you feel about changes in your life right now. As we finish up today, I want us to talk about this question. What's one change you feel nervous or scared about? Thanks, guys. It's awesome to have you here, and we'll see you next week for week 4 of Into the Unknown.